Thomas Tobin joins us now. Your Excellency, what do you make of that quote from Kennedy back in '60? I believe in an America where no public official either requests or accepts instruction on public policy from the Pope.
Sure, and that's a good reference and a very famous quote, of course. A little bit of a difference, though. I think what the ex-president was talking about was the establishment of a national religion. And in fact, what we're trying to do is not dictate what public policy should be in the United States from a purely Catholic doctrinal point of view. What we're trying to do most of all is instill good human values, but also have Catholics who are in political office be faithful to the dictates of the Church and the dictates of their conscience and the teachings of the Church.
I don't see how you read it that way, Your Excellency. I believe in an America where no public official either requests or accepts instruction on public policy from the Church. I don't know how you read that any other way than the way then Senator Kennedy said it. No instruction on public policy from his Church. You think he meant something different than what he said?
I suppose there are different ways of approaching that, but the point is that any Catholic in public office, his first commitment has to be to his faith. Not just for a Catholic, but for a member of any religious community. No commitment is more important than your commitment to your faith because it involves your relationship with God. And if your faith somehow interferes with, or your job gets in the way of your faith, as I've said on other occasions, you need to quit your job and save your soul. Nothing can become more important than your relationship with God.
If you were a member of Congress, and I know you're a political junkie from reading about you and talking to my friends about you, Your Excellency, what would be your voting record on abortion? How would you deal with the issue if you got to vote in Congress?
Of course, I'm not a member of Congress, but if I were, I certainly would never be in a position of supporting any degree of abortion legislation that enables or facilitates or encourages abortion. Keep in mind what we believe about abortion. Every time an abortion takes place, a baby dies. I don't know how people of good conscience, especially people from a Catholic background, could take that position in good conscience.
Well, what law would you pass?
Well, I think
that's what we're talking about here, Your Excellency, the law, not the morality of the issue, but the law. You're coming down on Congressman Kennedy and on other public officials because of the way they're approaching the law. What law would you write if you had the authority to do that?
Sure, I think I would write laws that I'd write laws that preserve and protect human life to the extent that it's completely possible.
That's the value. That's the value you recognize. This isn't about values. This is about human behavior. What law would you pass? Would you outlaw abortion?
I think that was certainly where our nation would want to move, much like it was before that disastrous decision of Roe v. Wade.
So you would vote to outlaw. No, I really want to get... We have to get down to this because your problem with Congressman Kennedy is his position on the law, what the law should read on abortion. What should the law be? What should a good Catholic, as you would put it, believe about the law? Should the law outlaw? Should it ban abortion? Is that what a good Catholic should do? Because you're instructing people now how to vote. So tell Catholics now on television how they should vote as members of Congress.
Sure. Catholics should vote as members of Congress on laws that preserve and protect human rights. I don't know that I'm in a position to comment on specific pieces of legislation because, as you know, there are hundreds of them and thousands of them.
Would you outlaw it? Let me ask you a broad question. Would you outlaw it?
Absolutely, because abortion is the taking of innocent human life.
Right, I know. Right. So that's where your difference is with Congressman Kennedy. He wouldn't outlaw it. Isn't that your difference?
Yeah, that's a huge difference. And keep in mind that I didn't go after Congressman Kennedy. I didn't single him out. I didn't look for him. I responded to things that he has said when he initiated his first unprovoked attack on the Church and other things he's written since then. So I haven't gone after him. I've responded to things that he has said consistently.
You said that we should go back to where we were before Roe v. Wade in '73. So let's go back to that if that is the prescription you're offering here. If you outlaw abortion at the state level, say at the Rhode Island level or at the Pittsburgh level in Pennsylvania where you come from or anything like that, then you make it illegal for a person to go get an abortion. So what does that do in fact? What's the effect on human life? You want to respect and preserve human life. What is the effect that has if you say a doctor can't perform an abortion? Would you criminalize it? Would you put people in jail? If it's murder, as you see it, would you criminalize it?
Well, the first effect on human life is that it would preserve human life, especially the life of the unborn child.
How would it work? I don't know. That's one of the questions I have. How would it work if you outlawed it?
Sure. Well, again, I think it would depend on the specific piece of legislation that was crafted, and I'm not in a position, I wouldn't even pretend to be in a position to do that. But the
well, that's
point
what you're
is
doing here. You're saying that Congressman Kennedy has voted wrong. Tell me how he should have voted. Should he vote to outlaw or criminalize abortion? If you say the doctor can't perform an abortion, then somebody else might do it, or they might leave the country to have an abortion, or they might do it illegally. Some midwife could do it, or somebody who flunked out of med school could do it. Unless you outlaw getting an abortion, I just wonder if you're really preventing it in any way. I mean, what would be the penalty for a woman getting an abortion in the world that you would like to construct here? What would be the penalty for a woman or a girl getting an abortion?
I have no idea what the penalty would be because I'm not a legislator.
Well, you're talking about but you're telling Congress people how to vote and what laws to pass. What laws should be passed on abortion? Yes, you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, what we're trying to do is say to Catholics,
I think you're getting into law here, and you don't like Congressman Kennedy's voting record in Congress. That's what you're really going after, where he stands on the law. A lot of Catholics agree or disagree in every poll I've seen about what the law should be. They generally accept the teaching authority of the church, the Magister, your teaching authority, Your Excellency. Where the disagreement is what the law should be, what the penalty should be. I've never heard of anybody in the church, in the laity, or in the clergy, or in the hierarchy saying a woman should be put in prison for having an abortion. And then I say, well, wait a minute, if you think it's murder, there's an inconsistency here. And if there's a hesitancy to punish a woman for having an abortion, maybe that's instructive to you, sir, Your Excellency, because when you realize you don't really want to punish a woman for having an abortion under the law, then maybe you should step back from using the law as your tool in enforcing moral authority. Maybe your moral authority comes from the pulpit and from teaching, and a congressman has a totally different role, which is to write the law. Now, I've asked you 3 times, Your Excellency, to tell me what the law should be, and if you can't do it, maybe you shouldn't be involved in telling Congressman Kennedy how to write the law. You say you don't know how to do it. Well, you ought to try before you tell him what he's doing wrong. That's my thinking. Because when it comes to the law, that's a secular question. It has not to do with the morality. We do a lot of things in this country we don't like and we think are immoral. But the question is, what sanction do you apply to it? And I'm asking you again with respect, because you are here on the show of your own free will at our request. What should be the penalty for a young woman or a girl even to have an abortion? And if there's no penalty for it, are you really outlawing it?
Sure, and there can perhaps be different degrees of penalties depending on the involvement of the person. There might be some penalty for the woman having the abortion. There might be some penalty for the doctor performing.
No,
I have no idea, and that's not my...
Well, you have no idea, and it's not your area, and yet this is the very area you've transgressed in. You've gone into the area of lawmaking and condemned the behavior of public officials who have to write public policy. And I go back to what John Kennedy said when he was under pressure to explain the separation of church and state, the difference between rendering unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, which is the law, and rendering to your flock and to people like me what is right and wrong. And I would contest that your problem is you haven't gotten people to obey your moral code through teaching, and you've resorted now to use the law to do your enforcement for you. And the problem with that is you are hesitant, even here, Your Excellency, to state for me now what the punishment should be under the law for having an abortion, because you know deep down, if you said 1 minute in prison, you'd be laughed at. Because the American people, Catholic and non-Catholic, do not think it's a criminal act to have an abortion. They may not like it, they may think it's immoral, but they don't think it's criminal. And yet you are here bringing the force of the law, the authority of the police and the bench, the law, the judiciary. You want to bring it all to bear, including the Constitution, to enforce your moral beliefs, which are...